this is the world. And I got to tell you, we got a good show today. You know why it's a good show? Anytime we're talking about AI for good, it's a good show. It's an important topic. And who better to talk about this than a friend of the show, Juan from Microsoft. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the rest of the name. I'm going to leave that to you. So, and if it's someone for AI for good, that means we have someone who is with us today who understands empathy and is thoughtful, because AI for good is not just the output. There's a lot of thinking that goes into that. So, Juan, my man, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Darren. Pleasure to be here.
So there's a lot way to get into, but the first thing I want to start with, how are you doing? How was the year? How'd you get through it? I mean, there's a lot here, but before we get into the data, how are you doing as a human?
I'm doing quite fine. It was definitely a very tough year for society. I'm very thankful that nothing has happened to my family, and that we have the ability to work from home, and we have the ability to. I recognize that that's not the case for a lot of people, basically. So it was definitely a tough year, but I consider myself very lucky on that perspective. So
I talk about this a lot. I say I'm living my best life in the worst of times. I mean, if you think about the challenges globally, but this time has really enabled me and so many of our guests to spend time on themselves. So I was on a show yesterday, and everyone talks about the digital transformation, and everyone's saying, that the pandemic has done a little bit of a human transformation of people upskilling and putting a little bit more time into themselves. For you, I'm happy that you're blessed as well, that you were able to stay healthy and have the space. Any skills that you or hobbies that you reconnected with, with all of this wonderful time?
So I'm trying, not succeeding yet. I'm trying to learn kite surfing. That's a difficult skill to get in, but that was one of the things that I learned last, that I decided to go and try. And I'm still trying. I hope that within the next year or before the pandemic ends, I will be able to achieve it. That's my hope right now.
Well, I gotta tell you, I lived in San Francisco, and I talk about this on the show. I lived in San Francisco when the pandemic hit. I'm part of the San Francisco to Miami, Florida exodus. And I kid you not, I'm blessed enough to live on the beach, and I look on the beach and I see kite surfers just about every day. It looks like, and no disrespect to you and the kite surfers, it's probably the one sport I just can't get into. It just looks dangerous. It looks like you got to be muscular. There must be a lot of off-ocean training that you have to do, because it just looks not easy.
Let me tell you one thing. I consider myself definitely not a person that is a sports person. So if I can do it, I'm pretty sure a majority of the people in the world can do it. I did my homework. I actually checked statistics. Accidents in kite surfing are actually lower per hour.
Okay, good.
Versus soccer, for example. Which so from that perspective, I did my homework. It's like, am I doing something crazy? And so usually I have a baseline that is like, in life you can do anything that it has a lower chance of accidents versus driving a car, which is something that everybody used to do for the pandemic, at least. So it is much lower risk than driving a car. So from that perspective, I think we're fine. So
and please wear a helmet. I mean, I see, because I see people going up in the air and these things. So as always, just make sure you stay safe. We want to be able to have a drink.
And full disclosure, I'm not one of those people, basically. So I'm not. I still.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. I love it. Now, one of the things that I'm trying to do in this community, and I'm glad we're talking on this, is I have a vision. It's a 5-year vision. And I think how long it's going to take to start something called Data Day, a national day on the calendar. So you've got Amazon Prime Day, you've got Valentine's Day, you've got Columbus Day, you have days. And I want to have a day. I want to have a day for us to celebrate. And as a startup person, we're going to do our first, MVP called Machine Learning Day. And it's a day just to celebrate. We know how hard it is. And when I say celebrate, I'm saying celebrate things like autocorrect on your email, a Spotify playlist, right? And you bring in an interesting dimension to this because this AI for good, there is so much good. But if I want to sue AI to celebrate for good, what should we be thinking about? Like, because, again, I want to keep layering this, is that I want to celebrate because we've been home for the last 18 months. We're starting to get out, right? So want you to be part of the day, but what should we celebrate?
So two things. I do want to make sure, like, I like the fact that we need to celebrate data. At the end of the day, majority of the reason why we have and we can use machine learning these days is because we have data, correct? And that's unfortunately a lot of times we look at either a paper or a success, and we celebrate the fact that we could solve some of these problems with the machine learning, and of course there's a lot to celebrate to that, but we forget that a lot of the problems that we are solving is because someone came before us and did the majority of the work, that is basically data collection. And so, and a lot of times, unfortunately, those people don't get enough recognition. So I do like the idea of celebrating data. And because again, a lot of people think when they talk about data and they talk about things like machine learning and big data, they usually think that data is the new oil. In reality, data is not the new oil. It has nothing to do with oil. Data is the new code, basically, correct? So when we're thinking about machine learning, we're thinking that the input for that coding, that now we, instead of having humans coding, we actually have data that is helping us do that work. So yeah, definitely a lot to celebrate on the data aspect.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought of like that celebration, right? There is the people before us that got us here and the tech that got us here. Like, it's one of those things that we talk about, that the phone that we carry is more powerful than the machine that got us to the moon. Like, if you just think about what we have with us, I just don't want people to be afraid of the data. I'm not even worried about the gold of it. I think there's so much good. And I think if more people understood all the good, maybe they would maybe share more freely, maybe not be so worried about where their data is. I mean, there are corner cases, but I also think that I still believe the majority of the world is good. You'll have corner cases on everything. But if we talk about AI for good projects, AI, like, how many can we do? But since we're in America, maybe versus other countries, we maybe can or can't do it, just for a lot of other reasons. But when we talk about AI for good projects, what comes to mind when I say that to you?
So I think for me, what comes to mind are those examples that I've seen. Like, I've been working on this space now for over 3 years.
Okay.
I started as a volunteer, and now I'm very thankful that Microsoft gave me the opportunity to work full time. There are problems out there that I found in the last 2 or 3 years that you could not solve without AI. Like, okay. That's something that opened my mind a lot. So a great example is a problem that we are working on, and we've been successful at it. Is diabetic retinopathy is basically the leading cause of blindness in the world. It's like those people that suffer from diabetes.
Okay.
If they're not treated, a third of those will develop diabetic retinopathy, and a third of those that suffer from DR will become blind if they're not treated. The problem is that there's 450 million people that suffer from diabetes in the world. This is 4 times what we used to have in the 80s, and we expect this number of people that, because our diet is changing, fortunately, in the world, basically, we will see many more people that suffer from diabetes in the next 50 years. And there's only 200,000 ophthalmologists in the world, so there's no way even to diagnose diabetic retinopathy unless we use something like AI to help with this. And that's one of the problems that we're seeing is that AI for good basically can have a huge impact in these type of problems. And I hope that in the next decade, we will see many more of these examples where we are using AI to augment the possibility of doctors to do more better, like more impact. So.
That is something I actually have been thinking about a lot during this pandemic. Is if I look back, and it's not a political look back, but if I look back at how the approvals went to get the vaccines, just imagine, because diabetes, I've read a lot on that subject, on just what it costs also in healthcare. It's a lot of, it's like 10 cents of every dollar something goes just to diabetes. And I was always thinking about, could we have pushed more through on, if we're going to solve COVID, can we have just pushed through some other places? Like, I think about that, right? Just imagine if we would have pushed through some other cures, tech cures, medical cure. I don't know, but I do think about that. I do think about the diabetes as well. It's an interesting topic.
I do think that thing, like, again, COVID has been a disaster for the world, but I do think that there has been a lot of advancements thanks to the people forcing themselves to try to solve this problem.
Yes.
And I am hopeful that this will make those advances will have some positive impact in the world too in the next year.
Yeah. And I think that also sets us up to a question that you and I wanted to talk about, was just, hiring experts in these fields. It's an interesting conversation because as you get to edge computing and new tech, there's not as many experts. So sometimes you think experts means male, 20 years of experience. Experts can be female, just out of high school, maybe. Yeah. So when we look at experts, what are you seeing, as the world is changing, both male, female, age, on this word expert? It's an interesting time to rethink, like, the bias of what we might think. And I'm not saying you think white male. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just, if I look at expert, it'd be interesting to double click on how the world sees what an expert is in tech, because it is just.
Yeah, we definitely don't see any gender issue, any gender component in who's an expert. I can guarantee you that, judging for the people that we hire in the team. I do think that the technology has changed a lot.
Yeah.
And what we usually look when we hire people is that people that have, I think it's much more important the ability for people to learn something new. Versus those that we probably used to think that were experts. Because again, yes, this technology continues to evolve. There's also a lot about, at least in the effort space, there's also a lot about having that drive because you're doing something for good, basically. That's something that we usually look for people that also has that, that are not just driven by solving problems, but actually driven for solving problems that are important for human society. Yeah. So yeah.
I was running a company, and I remember being at a Diwali party, and one of the parents at the Diwali party introduced me to his, I think it was like a 14-year-old son. And the son is like, I love to code. I could build apps. I'm like, you can start on Monday at our company. We'll give you something to build. And I just remember our CTO saying, I really should interview some of the tech talent before you hire. And I'm like, he's 14. This will be a dream job for him. And a 14-year-old was just writing some website blogs for us. He then went on to go, to Duke. I was his mentor, and then he just got a job at Google. It's just a crazy world. Like, just you think about how young, like, these skills are. You have a computer, you have internet access, and you can learn, and you can go as far as you want to go.
Yeah, definitely. And this is something that we learned. Also, we do hackathons every year.
Love it.
As part of these hackathons, we actually bring people that want to work with us, usually externally. and we have people that actually have show amazing skills where they're like 13, 14,
It's
15 years old,
crazy.
that are doing amazing, and especially in areas like coding. I do
Yeah.
think that the younger people that actually learn how to code when they're very young, they have
Crazy.
something that a lot of people don't have. That is basically they can think. It's like learning a language. Like I I try myself to learn English for the last 20, 25 years. And my daughter, that she's 7, she speaks English much better than me because she was able to learn it
Yes.
from like there's a time where we get languages. Something very similar happened with coding. So yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot there. And I'm not, I was just picking on the word expert because I think we see it the same way, but as we educate the audience, I think we have, what I like about, Juan is also, we have a very broad definition of the expert as the human, but we know the skill set they need. Like we still need to get the job done, but it's just so interesting the world we live in on that, who's going to do that job. I think that's incredible. So I want to say another thing. I want to thank you for being on the show, and we are a community, and we like to also introduce people, and our members like meeting each other. So if I can introduce you to people, like who would you like to meet? Is it in a sector? Is it a person? There are so many senior executives that we have on the show, and it's kind of a forced serendipity because you were still not traveling as much. So I'd love to introduce you to a couple of people.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just didn't know if there's anyone that you had in mind. If not, we can just.
For me, what is really important is to try to meet people that are working on important problems for society, and that it would be help them to partner with my group, basically with data science. Correct. So for us, we are always looking for opportunities to make an impact from a data perspective. Like our perfect projects are areas where you have, like, I don't know, for example, you have a medical expert or you have the subject matter experts, and that need someone from an AI perspective to do a partnership with that. Like we would never work on a project without a subject matter expert on the other side. Like
Got it. That makes sense.
We learned also really early how important for us was to partner with subject matter experts to solve these problems. So for me, always motivated to meet with subject matter experts that are working on very important problems, and that we could actually partner from an AI and data science.
I love it. Good direction. And there'll be people who introduce you, and likewise, there might be people you think that would be great to be on the show and be part of this. My last question is kind of more of a creative question, okay? And it could be a stupid question, but it's still. So if we do day-to-day, and by the way, day-to-day is going to be February 22nd, 2022, 2222. Think about that. Think we have a day. It'll always be on 222. Do you think we should have cookies? Is cookies, like, think about like the internet. You cookie? Is that a bad idea? We want to go viral, but like, do you eat a cookie on day-to-day, or is that like totally too much?
If I eat cookies every day?
No, but like on day-to-day, think about like a cookie in the world of data. Like you do have a cookie, right? It's a cookie. Like what should we do on day-to-day? Should we eat a cookie? Do you get the joke with a cookie? You like these websites give a cookie, like they cookie
Yes.
to track you. But should we have everybody eat a cookie on day-to-day?
Only.
And this day, we're going to celebrate some AI and AI for good.
Okay, that looks.
Hey, and Juan, I want to thank you for being on the show. You're a good sport, and what you're working on is important.
Thank you, Darren, for inviting me. I think what you guys are doing is great. So yeah. Look forward for many of your interviews in the future, with like listening to many of your interviews with other people. So.
Absolutely. Thank you for being part of the show. This show is going to air on Machine Learning Day, which is May 27th. And Juan will get a copy to your team, and we'll push it out there. We're super excited to have you.
Thank you very much, Darren.